Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright. I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
I was trying to get a spit take. I sped. I don't know if you heard it. I sped up to see you drink. You're a professional podcaster. I should know better. It is good to pod with you today. We are talking to, oh my God, we are talking to another Hall of Famer. Dr. Sharon Saline is back with us. We're going to be talking about masking. We're going to be talking about when masking becomes a relationship strategy. This is a big one, and it's a great follow-up to our conversation last week. And so if you haven't listened to that, it's part of a series. That's what we do now. Before we get started, though, head over to takecontroladhd.com to get to know us a little bit better. Listen to the show on the website. You can subscribe to us across the socials at Take Control ADHD and jump into our free Discord community at takecontroladhd.com/Discord. Most importantly, though, if this show has ever benefited you or your life with ADHD, I hope you'll give us a shot over at Patreon, patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. You can join us over there for a few bucks a month. You get access to all kinds of behind the scenes stuff. You get access to the show live streams. You can ask the guest questions as we record. And you know what? You can sleep soundly at night. If you ever had trouble sleeping, joining our Patreon will help you sleep soundly because you're supporting creators that you love. So we really appreciate you. For those who've already subscribed, thank you for being a member. We're so grateful for you. And to everyone else, water's warm. Take control. Patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. If you have ever spent an entire day performing a version of yourself that you felt nothing like the real you, holding it together at work, seeming calm in conversations, passing as organized or on top of things, you already know something about masking. And if you have ADHD, there's a good chance you've been doing it for so long it doesn't even feel like a choice anymore. It just feels like the day. Today, we're talking about what happens when masking stops being a coping strategy and starts becoming a relationship strategy, and what that costs us. Dr. Sharon Saline is back, and we're going to jump into the psychology behind the mask, why we build it, what it's protecting, and what it takes to finally let someone see what's underneath. Sharon, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I love being here. This is one of my favorite places to come and chat and hang out and talk about all things ADHD. So thanks for having me. Wonderful.
Love that so much. All right. So we're talking about the hidden exhaustion of masking. And Nikki, I know you see this in the people you work with every day, and you have completed for us a robust outline. Where would you like to start with our esteemed Dr. Sharon?
I think we start with just the definition of what masking is, because I think that I think a lot of people know what it is, but then I think a lot of people do it and they don't know that that's what they're doing, and maybe don't know that that's what it is. So let's start with the definition. What does masking mean?
I think masking means hiding traits or suppressing impulses or overcompensating in order to appear more organized, focused, calm, or socially polished than you may naturally feel. I think masking is really it's a coping mechanism, and sometimes it can help people navigate school or work or social situations, and it's a useful tool. Other times it can be really draining and increase anxiety and shame and burnout. Chronic masking in neurodivergent adults is associated with increased anxiety, heightened emotional exhaustion, greater risk of burnout, and of course, lower self-esteem. Is the thing about masking is you have created a persona that you are hiding behind because there's some concern of and it could be a valid concern of being who you think you are that people will reject and be uninterested in or turn away from.
Mm-hmm.
You put up this idea that you've got it all together, that you can handle it, or that you're the class clown, or you're the person who's the party giver, or whatever it is. You have a persona, and that persona may have components which are true to you, but they may also be exaggerated. And it's living with that exaggeration that can be exhausting.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've been kind of hitting on is not just like romantic relationships, but like also workplace, family, friendships, all of those, all of the different kinds of relationships. How does masking, or does it show up differently and depending on who you're with?
Masking in certain situations, it can be useful. I don't want to go into a meeting or with someone I don't know, or show up at a TV station for an interview and be the kind of same person that I am when I'm with my 3-year-old grandson. That's not, and that, but I don't consider that masking. I consider that presentation. I'm presenting myself in a professional capacity versus presenting myself as Bubby. If Bubby, puts on the cape and runs around the house pretending that she's super Bubby with the kids who are, trying to save somebody who stole donuts. That was our last.
I love that. I hope you got that thief
Oh,
because
you hear that? Someone has stolen donuts. We have to go.
yeah.
Super Bubby, followed by 3 little children. Superman.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
There's a really interesting thing that goes on here in what you're describing, because two points. First of all, I like calling it presentation. One of the things that I was struggling with is how it feels like I mask intentionally every day. There's podcast Pete. There's Pete who is hanging out in the kitchen with my wife. There's Pete who's hanging out in the bedroom with my wife. There's different Petes, right? There's all kinds of different Petes. That's I don't want to use the word masking around those kinds of Petes, because that's not the intention.
No, because when we're thinking about masking, we're talking about hiding. We're talking about hiding traits. You're like, excuse the analogy, but you're like a delicious apple pie, and where there's one section, might have nuts, and one section may just have the apples, and one section may have some peaches thrown in. Whatever it is, like you're this pie. It's a terrible analogy. Everyone's going to laugh at me when they hear that. But masking is a strategy. And the thing is, the question is, when is the strategy going to serve you and when isn't it? So in social situations, which is when we mostly see masking, we see strategizing, maybe like practicing conversations ahead of time in your head, how you think they're going to go. And by the way, they generally don't go that way. So don't spend too much time doing that. What's better is to have a general strategy. So instead of saying, oh, well, when this person says this, I'm going to say that. Chances of that person saying the thing that you think they're going to say are super small. But what you can have is a strategy of, if someone says something to you and you don't know how to respond, your response could be, that's a really good point. I'm not sure how to answer that. Can I think about it and get back to you? That actually involves no masking, because you're actually saying, I need some space, versus masking, which would be you acting like you understand what they're saying and you know exactly how to respond, or you're pretending how to respond in the way that you think they want you to. I mean, masking is so fundamentally related to social anxiety. And social anxiety is, I am very concerned about being in situations where I'm embarrassed or humiliated or rejected. And so I have to compensate for this core sense of deficiency that I believe I have to to be in those situations.
So we were talking a while ago, or a couple episodes back, where we were talking about how like the word of high maintenance and what that looks like. And I feel like from what you're talking about, that is a form of masking. If you're trying to be at this low maintenance, and I'm going to be the easy one, I'm going to be the one that says yes. I'm going to say yes, sure, whatever. Like I want to please you. I want to make that would be a form of masking because you're taking on more than what you really can, and you know it, but you're doing it
Right.
anyway.
Right. And the thing that's so interesting about that is that there's also sort of sort of an adjacent term which we use, which is camouflaging, which is when you kind of blend in with what other people are doing and don't voice your own opinion. With masking, you might suppress impulsive comments. You might mirror what other people are saying or doing, which is also a form of camouflage. You might hide the overwhelm or sensory discomfort that you have. And these can, alleviate a social anxiety in the short term, but in the long term, they're not actually going to get you where you want to go. Because ideally, you want to be who you are,
Mm-hmm.
tempered by the situation. So when I go to record a segment for a TV station, I'm going to be different than I am when I'm super bubby. And that's appropriate. And that's not masking.
Right.
That's just me being a part of myself, you know, the professional part of myself. And so I think that we have to be careful because masking is really about hiding. Like you might over prepare to avoid mistakes. So you have to look like you're masking as that you know everything because you don't want people to feel like you know nothing. Or you might say yes when you really mean no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go along with things. Or you might be quiet when you really have something to say, but you're afraid of embarrassment or criticism. So you're hiding that part of yourself. So when we talk about masking, we are talking about this idea of hiding. And yet, sometimes it's needed. Sometimes it's needed. It's needed for safety. It's needed until you've developed the tools and the skills that you need in a situation where that's novel or awkward or uncomfortable.
It sounds very much. I mean, what's forming in my head is a continuum, right? That the continuum where presentation, which is active choice of presenting the identity that I want to be seen as in a given situation, is on one end, and masking is on the other, which is I'm protecting myself by essentially pretending to be someone that inside I'm not necessarily, and I'm doing that to protect myself, to be, so that I can just get through the next whatever it is, the next event, the next phase.
Yeah. For example, let's say you have someone who hasn't treated you great professionally, but you're at a conference situation and you have to see them. So you are going to have to mask. But actually, you don't really care for this person at all and don't want to talk to them when you see them and be, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. Move on, right? So in that situation, masking is an asset. It is a tool so that you don't go up to them and say, "Wow, you really hurt my feelings, and you were a crappy friend. I don't want to really have anything to do with you." I would say, don't do that.
Yeah, right.
No, really not the time or place, and perhaps maybe never. Just so it is interesting to think about. And when we think about masking in relationships, because I want to transition to that, there are two different types of relationships we want to talk about. Masking in romantic or, intimate partners or dating even, and masking with your friends. So, ideally, you are your authentic self with your beloved, with your children, not, in an appropriate way, and with your friends. If you really can't be who you are with your friends, are they your friends? Um, so that's
It's sort of an inverse of Dunbar's number, right? I mean, it's like with your five closest friends, right in the middle, you're your most authentic. And as you get further out in the concentric circles to acquaintances, the degree of masking or presentation goes up.
correct. And that it should, because, in some ways, I see someone at the cafe I haven't seen for a number of years, and they might ask me a question about one of my kids. And I don't really want to go into the whole saga about how they're doing. I'll just say, oh,
They're
they're
great.
living here and they're fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. When
Right.
in my head, like it's absolutely not the case, but I'm not going to go into that because it's not appropriate. And then it's like, and then it gets like an oversharing. And then afterwards, I'm going to feel the yuck. Or what does my client say? You're going to feel the ick. Um, my 21-year-old's like, it's the ick.
It's
So,
the ick. Right.
Yeah, we've
Right.
moved on from yuck. Yeah, no, that
yes.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Well,
down
and
to the ick.
I think with dating too, it's risky, right? Because there's this part of you when you first meet someone and you're really into them, it's like you want to impress them. You want them to see you as this like, person that they want to spend time with. So there's a little of that anyway. But then when you're trying to mask these things, it's almost like false advertisement in a way too, right? Like you can almost like get yourself in trouble because you're not being your authentic self, and you can't be that person all the time.
Right. I mean, it's not the issue isn't I'm never going to mask. It's not an all or nothing. It's choosing when it's having consciousness about the choice because we all deserve places in our lives where we don't have to perform to belong.
Right, right.
Know? I
Yeah.
mean, I will tell the story if you don't mind. I had a birthday party a few years ago for a few of us who turned a particular age that I don't really want to say, but it begins with a 6. And I had this birthday party, and I was a little overexcited. And one of my best friends like turned to me, and she's like, "A little too much. It's a little too much." And I was okay. And I was like, at first I was like a little hurt, a little like RSD. But then then I was like, okay, she's giving me feedback. She loves me enough to give me the feedback. I don't want to ruin the party. I could take it back down. I could turn it down a notch, and I did. And I appreciated it. And I let her know afterwards. It was hard to hear, but I appreciated it. And so that's the thing that I think is really tricky about this, that you have to be willing to be authentic and risk that someone might give you some feedback that could be an ouch, but has value in it for you.
You bring up two situations, right? I guess you bring up another spectrum that I think is important to talk about with ADHD. One is I'm showing up to a social situation and I want to be authentic, but because of where I live on the spectrum of ADHD, I have a very difficult time attenuating my personality to the room. I can't read the room very well, so I need someone to push back on me, and being uncertain, particularly because of the relationship to social anxiety that we have with ADHD, can be paralyzing. But the other end of that spectrum is not being able to mask at all. I lived with a guy for a couple of years who was just an absolute sweetheart, and he could not mask. He was the same guy in every situation. We're out to dinner, we're in a meeting with clients, we're just hanging out watching TV. He's the same guy. And on some level, as his roommate, also with ADHD, I found him just completely joyous and also deeply exhausting. And I wonder how many people relate with that. People who, because of the read the room part, they actually can't attenuate their ADHD.
So that's a really interesting question because, story, excuse me, because I have a question to follow it up with. How did he think he was doing with his life? Was he satisfied with his life? Did he notice that there were challenges? Because if you're not noticing the challenges, or you notice the challenges and you don't care, then you're fine.
He was very much not satisfied, very much jumping from career to career, found out that he was, I almost want to make you guess, but I'll tell you that he's an actor. And that was fine. he was able to channel all of that energy into characters, and that turned out to be his outlet. He's now in Hollywood. He's making movies. He's fine. But there were a lot of very difficult years where he didn't know how to manifest his identity because he could not change who he was in social situations. As soon as it became professional, there's like a valve he was able to turn to be someone else completely, which I think is an interesting little twist.
Yeah, and I bet that helped him socially now because he knows where to put that. It's like he didn't know where to put that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, he's certainly not the only person I've met who has had trouble figuring out how to present versus how to mask because of the way their ADHD works. And I think that's the space I'm sort of living in right at this moment. Like, how do you learn to work with the psychology of protective masking or social masking and turn masking into presentation? So it's not quite so energetically sapping.
Right. I think some of it is, what's the function of the masking? How did it develop? And whether it's serving you or not. And because sometimes masking is a strategy that developed as a child, developed in childhood, to hide the things that you were getting negative feedback for, and in many situations, masking it's a compensatory behavior rather than having a more unified a more unified sense of self. Like I'm who I am, and there are different levels at which I share that, and that is not have to do with masking. Masking is there's an almost kind of a pretending aspect to it. I'm not showing you my full self, my true self, because I don't feel safe. I don't trust you. I've been hurt in the past. All of those things, which is different than I've got different parts of me. And, when I'm with my friends, this part comes out. When I'm at work, this other part comes out. Like, that's actually pretty healthy. That's how most people
We
function.
all have different roles. Yeah. We play different roles. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what are some of the consequences that happen if you're continuously in the masking piece of hiding who you are? What ends up happening, or give us kind of a glimpse of that?
Well, I think that core sense of deficiency that I talked about as a part of the definition of social anxiety, and that what I call the social anxiety spectrum, because underneath the umbrella of social anxiety we find RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, for those who don't know, perfectionism, and imposter syndrome. They all share a core sense of deficiency. So I think over time, what happens with masking is that people there's a greater and greater disconnect between what I'm showing to the world and who I feel like I am underneath. And that disconnect is troubling psychologically because it's hard to keep track of the mask. And then you feel disconnected. There's a kind of almost like it could be even lead to a kind of dissociative sort of experience where I'm not connected to the person I am out there. That's somebody else. It's not me.
You're masking. You find yourself, but where I'm struggling is how to transform masking from protective to productive.
Right. It's such a good question.
We have to do it. It's just a part of being human and engaging in groups. And yet, if we're doing it because of those consequences that we're talking about, if we're doing it from a strictly protective identity, it can become exhausting. It's just exhausting to live like that. And yet, being able to wield it to be in service of us, we have to understand, I think, right, some of the underlying constituent elements of our own psychology to be able to say, hey, this isn't serving me in this way anymore. What do I have to do to help it serve me?
Right. So I think that the sort of question would have to be then, why am I afraid? Why am I afraid of being genuine? what are the circumstances in which I feel like I can actually be more authentic? And what are the obstacles of getting in the way for me to lower the mask so I could be more of myself in a given situation? Because masking as protective is it the function of that is I feel unsafe. I feel vulnerable. I'm worried. I'm scared. Something bad is going to happen to me. Masking as productive um, is a choice that you make in a in a situation because you don't want to get you don't want to be too close to a person who or people or in a situation it's not comfortable yet for you. And so that's sort of the difference for me is like more productive masking is you're making a conscious choice because you don't feel comfortable yet versus masking protective is I will not feel comfortable. I do not feel comfortable. There isn't any safety for me.
Yeah, that makes total sense, right? It's this idea of I know that I can be a lot at this party and I know that I'm going to have to present a certain part of myself just long enough till I figure out who these people are and what is going to help me feel safe. And at that point, I'll be able to sort of I'll let go of the fear of letting people down or letting people see a part of me that that they may not be ready for.
Oh, we're ready.
Well, we're ready.
Right.
Bring it
Well,
on.
I mean,
Yeah.
you say it like it's actually really interesting. I'm sitting here thinking about the fact that I don't like I spend a lot of hours on video and a microphone every day. And there is never really a sense where I feel completely safe doing this because there is risk. There's risks of putting my foot in my mouth, saying something stupid, saying something that I will be remembered by. And so
You could be canceled in a split
God
second.
forbid. I hope not. I really
Yeah.
hope not.
But no,
yeah,
I mean, there's a real
that's
fear
a
for that, for
legitimate
sure.
risk.
There
Yeah.
is a real fear, and particularly for ADHD people, masking serves a purpose. It can take people with ADHD longer to develop a sense of safety in a given situation, and that masking helps them develop, sort of adapt. And so the question is, does it ever stop? Do they is it and that's what I would wanna talk about with someone, like, yes, masking can be adaptive, to help you adjust to a situation. When do you lower the mask?
Let's talk about that because I think that's a great next step, right? I think we've kind of formed this picture of what it is, the different types, when it serves you, when it may not. So, when do we lower the mask? What are your suggestions on that?
It's a good question. I think it's kind of individual. I don't think I can tell you when it's okay for you to lower your mask, but I think the thing that I would want to look at are the patterns of situations or people or dynamics when I notice that it's okay for me to reveal a little bit more about myself. So it would be identifying patterns, um, places, situations.
People, right? Because I think if you can identify who are the people that you mask the most with,
Right.
tells a lot.
And the people, yeah, who you don't, right?
Yeah.
Who among your group do you not mask with? Who do you feel that you can trust and that you feel safe with and that you feel protected by, that you can be your authentic self? Because that actually is the marker. When you go into any situation, you know when to lower the mask, when you feel that again, right?
Exactly. So what is that feeling? What are the sensations that you have physically? What are the perceptions that you have, in your senses, or what's your gut telling you? And those are the things that I think are really most important.
Well, and it also makes you kind of have to think about, do I have the right people around me? Am I in the right job? Do I have, the right coworkers and colleagues and things like that? Because if you feel that unsafe,
all the time.
It may be time to be looking for something
Right.
else
But
that
I
suits
think
you
but
better.
I think it's also important to realize that, if we think about relationships, whether it's work or social, there are some people who are good to talk about some things with. And there are other people you don't really want to talk about certain things with them about because they don't you've tried that, it didn't go well, or you don't feel so safe. That is okay. Then in those situations, you don't address those topics. Is that a form of masking? I'm not sure. I mean, because in a way, you're protecting yourself by not by sort of avoiding certain things, but in another way, it's a super healthy coping mechanism. It's like,
Absolutely.
so I
Right.
say, not, yeah,
You have to know.
talk about, I'm not going to talk about, issues that I have in my psychotherapy practice with somebody who is a mechanic. Or with my mechanic in particular, because they're not interested. They're interested in talking about my car and when it's going to be ready, and maybe when they're off the clock, they might be interested. But at that time, that would be an inappropriate choice. And so that isn't necessarily about masking, but about you know just
Reading the room almost.
reading the room and making sensible social choices. And if you're not sure what that sensible social choice is, then masking would make sense.
I think what I was thinking more is the person who's bringing work home, and pretending like they're getting it done during the day, or there's a lot of pressure and they're not comfortable talking about where they need accommodations, and I don't even mean formal accommodations, just that, and not necessarily even highlighting ADHD, just saying I need more time on this, or I need some more clarity. Like that's kind of where I was thinking, is more of like hiding the ADHD.
Yes, and I think that hiding the ADHD and not masking is very problematic, and it's problematic for many people at work, that I'm going to act as if I've got it all under control when really I need more assistance, and that masking is what is very unhelpful. You're hiding, and ultimately the product of your hiding is that things could go down the tubes instead of just asking for help and being okay with that. And I think that means that you'd have to really kind of accept who you are and accept having ADHD instead of feeling ashamed about it.
Well, and I think yeah, I mean, you've just described a circumstance where I think the real danger is your masking has become such a habit that you don't remember a time when you weren't doing it, right? Where it's just a constant exhausted muscle that is tense all the time. And it's one of the reasons I know this is a sticky conversation, because again, it's so fluid. But the most important thing for my money to get out of this conversation is just to talk about it with myself, to think about, when am I doing it? Now that I have a word that describes this circumstance, when does it appear for me? When can I apply this word to my behavior? Because that will help me become aware of it, and help me sort of navigate releasing that muscle a little bit and letting myself be a little bit more free.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I see where I see masking at work is over functioning and saying yes when you mean no, or you're overwhelmed, to compensate for executive functioning challenges that you don't want other people to see. And so the path sort of out of that conundrum is to basically own that you have these challenges and you're struggling, and you either need an assistant, or you need to check in with your boss about your progress more regularly. And then but all of this circles back to that core sense of deficiency. If I thought I was okay, and I wasn't loser with a capital L, because I have this challenge, like I'm always late, I don't want to be late, then and I hate myself for being late, then it would be much easier to just be neutral with it. And I think that neutrality on various subjects is what the difficulty with neutrality in areas or subjects is what leads people to mask.
Okay. Last tricky question. You just described a circumstance that does apply to me in certain areas. You're masking because you want to be the guy that people see as, I'll say, low maintenance, right? And it frustrates you, and you're full of self-loathing because you're late every day. Just masking does not necessarily mean you're going to be on time every day, because that the behavior and the experience of ADHD is in conflict with masking. Masking is not a medication.
Right. So for me, as someone who also struggles with time management, it was surprisingly 13 minutes like hanging out before you guys got here. I was like, and of course, when I'm always early and someone is not, I freak out. What's wrong with me? What did I do wrong this time? And core sense of deficiency, that shows up. It's like, is something wrong? Am I in the wrong place? Blah, blah. But the thing is, with time and with other executive functioning challenges, it's so much easier in the long run to own them and have a sense of humor about it, to laugh with yourself. Like, oh, here I go. I'm struggling to be late again. It's hard to hate yourself. I worked with this man when I was in my master's, getting my master's. This was a long time ago. And we would lead groups together. And he was always late. I mean, always late, like 15 minutes late to anything. And I was generally on time, give or take a few minutes. Like, that's my kind of thing, my lateness. Right? And I was like, well, it's a little hard because I don't know if you're coming. And I was an intern, so I have like zero power, right? Zero influence. But I said, I'm struggling. I said to my supervisor, I'm struggling because he's late all the time and I never know if he's coming. And she said, why don't you tell him that? And I was like, ah. So I went and I said, it's really hard for me. It's hard because you're, late and I don't know if you're coming, and I come early just, to set up and everything for the groups. And he said, I'm not late until I get there. I was like,
what is that
okay.
supposed to mean?
That's like I just spoke to the riddle of the Sphinx.
Yeah.
Hey, you're not late till you get there. Right. But I'm here with you. And so if he had just owned it, it would have been different. And so that was, in a way, I mean, to me, it was his narcissism, but it kind of also like a denial, like, oh, and so I think that there are times when people might mask as a way to hide a certain kind of culpability or guilt or shame about a part of themselves that they'd really rather not live.
Yeah, and you just gave us a spinoff on narcissistic deflection that is going to be a whole separate episode because, oh my God, that is
that's it.
Yeah.
That's great
I'm not
example.
late till I get there. I'm like, yeah, but dude, the rest of us are here.
Right. Yeah. Like everybody else around here. Like, yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Great stuff.
Hey, Sharon, you're
thank you
the
so
best.
much.
Thank
This was
you.
wonderful.
I'm so glad you're here. And I, again, want to just emphasize that for people with ADHD, that masking can be a very important, a protective and useful tool to to help them make transitions into uncomfortable spaces and learn how to adapt to them.
The accountant, we've talked about the accountant before with Ben Affleck, and I love it because he does that, right? When he's trying to relate to his to the gal, and just the way he's like, hi, how are you? And kind of just the way he's trying, he's practicing and he's trying to be in that social moment.
And having a few phrases is a great thing. Like, I mean, practicing a few things makes sense. To be able to say, oh, that's a really interesting point. Let me think about it and get back to you. Or, I'm not sure where you're coming from. Can you explain a little bit? Like, just to have one or two things in your pocket to take the heat off of yourself and allow more space so that you can kind of catch up, right?
Sharon, what are you up to? What do you want to share with the world?
Well, I'm up to, I redid my website, so it looks really fabulous.
That's exciting.
I now have a resource library on my website and a store of mini and master classes that people can sign up for and do on their own. www.drsharonsaline.com. And I'm writing a new book called Breaking Free from the ADHD Anxiety Cycle, 10 Steps to Transform Worry, Build Confidence, and Get Things Done.
Love it.
The big mouthful. That's why I have to I'm still practicing.
Yeah. We have to do the same thing. I still have to look at the subtitle.
I got the main title, and that's about where I stop. I'm like, you can read the fine print.
There's everything pretty much. Yeah.
Right.
I love it.
Well, I will say I'm scrolling the website right now, and it's lovely. I love the blues. I love you're wearing blue glasses in every one of these promotional shots, and they're just delightful.
Blue glasses right now because I'm wearing my computer glasses, but here they are.
Very classy. Just a ball of class right there. Sharon Saline, class act.
They see you much better. I wear these
expert.
right.
Well, when that book is launched, you let us know, and we will have you back on the show to talk about it.
I will, when I have finished the manuscript, I want to come on because I did a survey, and I have 1,470 responses about living with ADHD and anxiety, and I would really love to come on and talk about that.
We would love it.
Yeah, name
absolutely.
It. Name it.
Really fascinating.
All right.
So we'll make a date for that for the future. And thanks for bringing me on. I love it. It's great to be with you. And what a really interesting and rich conversation.
DrSharonSaline.com. Visit the page and behold its wonders and its glorious color scheme. I love it. It's joyful. We appreciate everybody downloading and listening to the show. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Thank you for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, head over to the Show Talk channel in our Discord server. You can join us right there by becoming a supporting member of the show at the deluxe level at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer and Dr. Sharon Saline, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.